I'm glad that I get to speak first after the break because now everybody's got a little energy because about 15 minutes ago, all I heard was despair and frustration. And that should break the heart of every legislator that sits in legislatures across the United States. So I've got a couple things, and I know I probably have a time limit. There is a rule though, never trust a politician with a microphone. Never ends well. But I don't call myself a politician. I'm an employee of the people. And I think that that's probably where myself and JD, probably, in fact, most of the people in this panel, we differ from our colleagues because we recognize we work for you. We don't work for the court, they didn't elect us, and we sure as hell don't work for a governor. We work for the people. That's the construct of our government. And the court seems to have forgotten that. So we're here to remind them. So there's a couple of high-level things that I'm going to speak to, given that I have to kind of move along. But I'm going to tell you what we're doing in Arizona. One, and I'm going to try to touch on each, come back and revisit each one of these. The pressure cooker strategy. How many of you know what a pressure cooker is? Show of hands. No, I mean really, a pressure cooker. Okay, half the room. Y'all need to get back into canning. Okay? And then legislation is only as good as the courts. Only as good as the judges who have to carry it out. And then family court orders that go on forever, the temporary order that goes on for 9 years. And then I want to talk a little bit, I'll probably wrap this up with racketeering. I heard the elements of the crime of racketeering with the last panel, but I didn't hear anybody discuss it, so we'll get into that. But let me give you just a really brief hearing, and I'm glad that my good colleague from Idaho, Senator Tammy Nichols, is on this panel with me. Arizona stood up back in April of last year, a joint legislative ad hoc committee, meaning it's not a regularly sitting committee, but the President of the Senate, when I went to him and said, hey, we're sitting on plutonium here. We need to do something on behalf of thousands of parents in the United States in the little state of Arizona. And our population isn't nearly what some of you states are. We're kind of tiny compared to the rest of the country. While the Biden administration says we only have 6.5 million, it's probably closer to 8, that whole census thing, yeah. But we have had 4 hearings, over 40 hours of testimony, and stories that would absolutely break your heart. Now, I know that the people in this room, those stories came from some of you. So we are making progress. I don't want to brag about things, but we have had one judge recuse herself from all of her cases. We don't know exactly what's behind that, but I would say it's probably the pressure cooker strategy, which is low heat in a confined space and lots of time. Then you turn up the heat until you have the right pressure. Then you see results. So think about that for a moment. And here is some of what we took away from, and I would be remiss if I did not call out our policy advisor, Elena Kozlowski, from the Senate. If you would like to get a copy of the Senate Ad Hoc Committee's report, please just, I'll give you my contact information when you're at the end of this. Be happy to furnish it to you because it appears to be a template of just about everything that we've heard here today. But there's some common themes that went out of this. First of all, oversight gaps for court-ordered psychologists and allied professionals. All right, so besides being the co-chair of the Joint Legislative Ad Hoc Committee on Family Court Orders, I'm also the chairman of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. Does the word audit send kind of a chill down the back of your spine? Well, it does when you offered to do an audit of the Office of the Court Administrator. Huh. Could you show me your criteria for employing psychologists and allied psychiatric care professionals? Why is it that they need to have quasi-judicial immunity? Well, we know why, because they don't operate within a recognized standard of practice. In other words, the insurance company wouldn't pay them because they're so far to the fringe that there is no proof that what they're advocating works. That's why an insurance company's not gonna pay for it. That's why they need to have quasi-judicial immunity. So, next on the hit parade, there's very little for the child's voice. Voice of the minor. Have we kind of forgotten this is supposed to be about the best interest of the child? Not the best interest of the attorney, or the best interest of the psychologist, or anybody who is engaged in billable hours. So the court appears to have become captured by what I'm going to call the Family Court Orders Industrial Complex. Thank you, President Eisenhower. Because it is a weaponization of the court against families, against parents. We heard testimony that hundreds of thousands, in a couple of cases, millions of dollars have been spent by parents to maintain some level of activity with their children. Temporary order that goes on 9 years. That sounds like an attorney who is inflaming the passions of one of the litigants to the point of vexatious litigation. It also sounds like a psychologist who really likes the idea that he's got the goose that laid the golden egg. And yes, that is a phrase that was used between two psychologists when the law in Arizona was passed. And unfortunately, our governor, the social worker who calls herself Governor Hobbs, vetoed a bill that actually would have reversed this. And that would have been to require the approval of both parents going into court-ordered behavioral intervention, COBE. By the way, COBE is probably the biggest threat to family integrity that has ever come along. And the guys that came up with this, a guy by the name of Cohen, former judge, a guy by the name of Weinstock, a so-called, I'm gonna call him a pseudo-psychologist, because they're so far out on the fringe, but they're trying to sell this as a licensed product to the states to use. Once again, we now have a financial incentive that has crept into the court system for all the participants for getting the poll star of the best interest of the child. We're gonna force you to have a relationship with a guy who sodomized you. Wow, that's a winner of an argument to a child. The guy who raped your mom, well, it's just domestic assault. It's okay. It'll all be good. Oh no, it's not all good. So we've also identified reunification programs, which quite frankly are kidnapping. Did you know that a judge does not have authority to remove a child from the county of their jurisdiction? Think about that one for a minute. You've got a Maricopa County judge. Fortunately, this can't happen in Arizona anymore, but you've got a Maricopa County judge that sends a child to Texas, not only out of the county, but across state lines, against the child's will. That's an important factor. That's called kidnapping. Literally, a kid taken out of the state to another state. We've got fragmented accountability and quasi-judicial immunity, which, by the way, I intend to blow up in the next legislative session in Arizona. It's not needed. Now, the people who are protected by it, of course, would say that it is. I'm especially interested in the commentary that happened in the last few minutes of the last panel, because it's extremely important. Under Section 1983, Federal Code, You cannot interfere with somebody's civil rights under the color of authority. Judge. You can't engage in kidnapping. You can't engage in the severance of parental rights without a jury trial. That will be another thing that we're going to introduce. Then, of course, cost, access, and due process. These are straining families to the point where the house that a child should be reared in is going up for foreclosure sale. Wow, Judge, you kind of blew it on that one. All because they need to pay for what? The vexatious litigation and the psychologist who wants to have this thing go on and on and on and on. Then we have training and competency. In Arizona, your state may be different, but in Arizona, it is usually a 2-year assignment of a new judge, and the new guy always gets sent to family court because nobody wants to do that duty. So they don't want to be there. They probably have not had any training whatsoever in PTSD, domestic assault, sexual assault, deviant behavior, although some of them might actually be deviants. Then, of course, we've got the sexual predators, who, by the way, hide behind their psychologist degree, sending children to their groomer parent. All of this leads me to believe that we have a racketeering case that is ripe for a receptive U.S. attorney. So there are some legislative options that I want to go through, and then I promise I'll wrap it up. Am I getting close on time? I'm trying to be respectful of our host. So there's some structural options that we can pursue, some elements to codify. One of the things that is very interesting in Arizona law, and I forget which title it is, I want to say Title 26, but I don't think that's right. Section 403, in fact, if you go to Grok is your friend here. Arizona law, section 403, is the schedule of concerns that a court is supposed to take into consideration for awarding parental custody. There's 12 of them. And it kind of looks like somebody took a handful of darts and threw them at a board all at the same time. The list in order of priority makes absolutely no sense. Number 6 on the hit parade, I think, is domestic assault. Number 8 might be sexual assault. Okay, why wouldn't those be number 1 and number 2? Okay. So one of the things that we are going to pursue is the reordering of those. And in Arizona, there's a court case, I believe referred to as Gutierrez, where the appellate court came out and said, well, you don't have to abide by that because it's just a temporary order. That might go on for 9 years, but it's just a temporary order, so you don't have to do that. No, we're going to codify, who knows if the social worker acting as governor signs the bill, but we're going to codify that, yes, indeed, temporary orders have to consider the top 4 items. And number 5 on that list is going to be voice of the minor. At 14 years of age, most adolescents know that the parent who cares for them most is the place they want to be. Right now, the courts don't even listen to what the minor has to say. We want to change that. We want to make sure that kids have a voice in where they're going to go, because here's my experience in speaking with some of the adolescents who did not testify for fear of retribution by the court, but talking to some of the aged out minors, now adults. The only thing that Kobe taught me to do is live my life within the system until I could age out. In other words, fake it till you can't take it. taught them how to game the system. That's the only thing that it has done. It has not reunified, well, it might have reunified, but it sure as hell didn't re-energize a relationship that has to happen organically. You cannot force an individual to be with their abuser and expect that that relationship will be rectified without the abuser changing their ways.